legal experts say that Thabo Bester's alleged accomplice in his prison escape, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, will have to provide solid evidence before the court to justify her bid to declare her arrest unlawful. Magudumana filed an urgent application challenging her arrest in Arusha, Tanzania, which happened last month. In that application, she suggests that she was abducted in reference to her arrest. She faces 12 charges linked to Bester's escape from Mangaung Prison in May of last year. The matter is expected to be heard on Thursday in Bloemfontein. But let's unpack this further. We're joined this morning by Ian Allis, who is a criminal law expert, and he joins us via our video link. Ian, it's great to see you. Thanks for coming on. What do you make
Good morning, Charlotte. Good morning to the viewers.
Thank you. What do you make of this application by Nandipha Magudumana?
I don't believe it has actually any merit whatsoever. It seems to be a very, very desperate attempt to just garner some false support and false hope to try and get herself exculpated and off the hook from this. There is no indication whatsoever from what took place that either the arrest was unlawful or there was an abduction that actually took place. In order for one to establish that, one actually has to take a look that it has to be unlawful and there has to have been something untoward when that person was brought back into the country. There's no barring of trade relations between two police forces, being the Tanzanian police force and the South African police force, in order to apprehend people who are on the run and subject to warrants of arrest.
Okay, let's take a step back, Ian. What are you saying? So if they were in Tanzania, right? How would that arrest process have happened? What would have been the communication between the SAPS and the police in Tanzania?
What they would have done is gone through international channels, usually through Interpol itself, which I believe there was an Interpol warrant that was issued after it was found that Thabo Bester had escaped past the South African border. So normally what will happen in a situation like that is there's Interpol officers in various countries. The Interpol representatives would then basically create a joint task force, both from the South African SAPS and from the Tanzanian police services, in order to investigate and make the arrest and send the people and deport them immediately back to South Africa.
So is there anything in terms of process that could have gone wrong or could not have been done properly that Nandipha Magudumana might be able to use in this court application?
Let me put it in this way. On the face of it, everything seemed to be above board. The problem is the devil is in the detail, and there's so many details that no one actually gets sight onto with regards to the communications, with the directives, what was contained in the various documentation, and what the plan of action is. So from a face value perspective, everything appeared to be above board. It seemed to have been a joint task force between the two agencies. Interpol was involved in it as well, from what I recall, and everything appeared to be above board. The problem is, what happens in a police station often is where the little nuances actually come, and that's where we don't actually know.
Right. Yeah, and that makes sense, because what she is saying in these court papers is that she wants her arrest to be declared unlawful. She's calling it an abduction. But she also talks about her detention. And I suppose, I'm guessing here, what she's referring to is her detention before they were brought back to South Africa.
I'll assume the same thing.
I mean, how might that have sort of not been by the book?
Okay, one needs to take a look and understand that every country's got its own criminal procedure and its own criminal laws with regards with arrests and all and those type of things. South Africa differs from Tanzania, which differs from the UK, which differs from South America. Since everybody does have certain little nuances, there might be differences in how they were held, how they were Mirandized, where they were in actual fact transferred to, pending the transfer back to South Africa. So that is where the problem actually is. It might be deemed as unlawful in South Africa, but in Tanzania it was a correct procedure. So in that way she can't rely on it, because in the land of her arrest, that is where it takes precedence.
Right. The other uphill battle, I suppose, insofar as this court action is concerned, Ian, is that it is on an urgent basis, and she will have to convince the court of the urgent nature of this application.
I think it goes even further beyond that. Is, in uncertain terms, an unlawful arrest is also more of a civil-based type of a remedy, if one could say that. None of them can claim that they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. A prime example of something like that is a person gets pulled over at a roadblock, or they're shopping in a clothes shop, and it turns out there's a gambling ring underneath, and everybody's in the clothing shop gets arrested. The woman was arrested with a warrant for several charges, so there's nothing unlawful about her arrest. Secondly, she's got to show the burden of why it was an unlawful arrest. Urgency as well. I can't see how she's going to be able to get around the aspect of urgency when none of the merits have in actual fact even been heard in regards to the criminal trial. And furthermore, she hasn't pleaded out for bail. She hasn't brought her bail application. So realistically, what version is she intending on bringing before the court in support of a perceived non-guilty plea? So I think she's got more than just one uphill battle on the urgency, but even on the merits, they say, you know what, because the person's behind bars, we'll be willing to hear it. There's no merit at this early stage to hear a civil proceeding on an unlawful arrest, because that will in essence vacate the entire charge.
Is this sort of uncharted territory for us, this case in its entirety, Ian, from the nature of the charges, from where they stem from, this audacious prison escape, fleeing to another country, being arrested in another country, brought back to South Africa? Is this sort of an uncharted place that we're in?
I wouldn't say it's an uncharted place per se, but what I would say is people are getting overly involved in the hype, and I do believe that you've got certain accused in this matter who are making spectacles of themselves, and they are trying to go ahead and create a soap opera where the facts are pretty simple, and that's where the problem in actual fact is. They're creating a media hype, in a way to try and deflect from what the true aspect of this. The fact is, this isn't the first prison escape we've ever had in South Africa, but it is probably going to take the award for the most audacious one. And the parties, in turn, have come back almost in a way that they're feeling like heroes and pretending to be heroes rather than the villains that they actually are. So that's where the problem is, and they're just parading this and trying to find loopholes to justify their actions.
Ian Allis, let me thank you for your time this morning. Thanks for weighing in on what is a big developing story, and this case is going to be heard later on in the High Court in Bloemfontein. Linda Mnisi is our reporter tracking the story. Ian, thanks very much indeed for joining us.